welcome booktuber and blogger VUVU, and she is going to tell us about all things bookish and her love for literature. Welcome to the Loft, VUVU.
Thank you, Palisa.
Now, girlfriend, tell us about being a booktuber. What does that entail, and what inspired you to be one? Where does your love for books start?
Oh, wow, that's a very nice question because I always take the opportunity to talk about my late mom anytime anybody asks me that. So my love for stories and books actually came from her and my paternal grandmother, who's also late. So let me start with my paternal grandmother. She was a Xhosa teacher in the village of Kunu in the Eastern Cape, and she loved to tell inzomi, which is like folklore, right? Everybody in all cultures has that. So that was her favorite thing to do whenever her grandkids were around her. And from that, she planted a seed for the love of stories. So the person who cultivated that seed was my mom. My mom, in the early stages of her career, was a history lecturer at a teaching college in Umtata. So she would drag me out of all her 4 kids with her during school holidays to go to the library at the teaching college. And there they had a huge amount of books for young kids. And I would camp out in the library the whole 8 hours she was working. Sometimes I'd even forget to eat, and I would consume all these books. And then the time came where she would rent these books out from the library for me. And that's how my love for literature started.
VUVU, it just seems like there's something special about our maternal figures that shape the people that we are today. Our moms, okoko, you know, the people that are essentially the heart and soul of a home.
That is very true.
Now, I'm sure that having a love for books and also those that love to read, the lockdown period was perfect to catch up on those books. How has the lockdown period been for you? And did you find a form of escapism in reading?
Reading is definitely an escape, especially for times like this, Palisa, because you really do need to understand that there are other realities at play in life and that things do continue, things do change. And reading does that for you. As soon as you close one book and open another one, it takes you on a different adventure. It gives you the sense of continuity. That is something that I think we need during this time. Lockdown, when it started for me, I was thrilled because it gave me the time to read, right? But then, as everybody knows, because this is such an emotional time, there came a point where I had what people call a reading slump. So in March, I read like a crazy person because I was like, yes, 21 days, let's do this. And then in April, I went through a dip because things were not changing and the 21 days turned to something else, right? And I struggled to read. But then I remembered again that the only thing that will keep me going is understanding that this has a time frame as well. And when you read and you understand other people's stories, you'll realize that things will change. It won't always be this way.
Now, VUVU, you also have a podcast called Turning Pages. Explain to us about it and what differences do you discuss on the podcast compared to in your BookTube channel?
Okay, let me touch a little bit on the BookTube channel. So when I started it 2 years ago, I started it because I had been exposed via social media to what they call Bookstagram, which is where book lovers share their pictures on Instagram. And from Bookstagram, I came to learn about BookTube. And when I went on there, I couldn't find any South Africans doing this, right? And I found maybe 2 people, and they were not active at all. And I decided that, you know what, I love reading, and I did need a little bit of a push for myself to continue reading. And because I love literature so much, and because my mother was the seed cultivator in me, I wanted to do the same for my kids. I've got 2 little kids, and I wanted them to be able to see my love for literature somewhere, and I wanted to immortalize that in a sense, right? So I went on to BookTube for myself and also hoping that whoever was looking for somebody South African on there would find me. And so from there, I started playing around with everything that has to do with books, and I ended up on podcasts, and I heard a lot of international bookish podcasts and about 2 South African bookish podcasts. So my palette was really not about exploring anything from specifically the continent, even though I am drawn to African stories and anything from the African diaspora. But my platform on BookTube does not really focus on African. So I wanted a platform where I would now exercise this muscle of African literature, and I wanted it to be exclusive from my BookTube. So that's how I started Turning Pages. So it does focus on South African and African authors and their books.
Uyabo, that's what I'm talking about. That's that queen seeing a gap in the market and saying, I can infiltrate and do the best possible job. You know, hats off to you, girlfriend.
Thank you.
Now, which books have you caught up on during lockdown, and which books do you recommend?
Okay, so I've managed to read a few books. So I set a target every year of different amounts of books. Some people read like very fast. I'm not a fast reader. So this year I set myself a target of 30 books. I am currently on 11 books, which I am excited about, and most of those were read during lockdown. And what I found with my palette during lockdown is that I am drawn to Nigerian female authors. They are bringing the heat when it comes to literature. I've read so far something from Tomi Adeyemi. I think people would know her from The Legacy of Orisha. I've read a debut novel from Oyinkan Braithwaite called My Sister, the Serial Killer. I have recently finished with a group of other book lovers a collection of short stories called What Happens When a Man Falls from the Sky, which is by Leslie Arima, and I'm reading a sequel to Tomi Adeyemi's book. All of those authors are female Nigerian authors, and they are really bringing some kind of vivid imagination into their storytelling that anybody can be drawn to. And I would recommend them for anybody who's looking for a story. You know how African people can tell stories. If you're looking for that, then I would recommend all of those authors.
Kwasuka-sukela, Nkosi. That's essentially what we're looking for. You know, those ancient traditions of storytelling that we celebrate as abantu. So, VUVU, you know, for me, I have been very vocal and vulnerable about this on the show, that I am not a good reader. I have not grown up being a strong or fast reader. So, girl, when you said that you have 30 books as a goal and you've clocked 11, I was like, congratulations, because I couldn't find myself doing that. But I draw inspiration from people like you, and I also draw inspiration from people like Utata Madiba, who's now passed. July represents all things Mandela Month, and I want to find out from you, you know, certain people donated their 67 minutes in various ways. How were you able to do that in book form, and how would you love to see Umzansi moving forward in terms of embracing literature?
Literature is something that's very, as you can tell, something that I'm very passionate about, because I believe that it has a lot to do, or it contributes a lot towards a person's personal development, because it allows you to imagine things that aren't. And a person who can imagine is a person who can bring about solutions, who can see past their reality, and that's a very important part of literature, I believe. And as for 67 minutes, at the start of lockdown, I tried to start a digital book club, right, via Facebook. But very soon I realized, obviously, people can't buy books. So whatever books I try to get them to read, they won't be able to read. I am restarting that digital platform, and anybody and everybody is welcome to start. And I think that Mandela Day would be a great day to start and announce how that book club will work. It's currently just called the VENA Book Club. It's through Facebook, through my page, which is VENA Reads. And there I do want us to start reading our own stories. I do think that that is something that's very important, especially when you talk about the legacy of Mandela. I think that when we discover from our own stories what we've been through, what we are capable of, and what we can expect in the future, it will ignite a bit of hope. Yeah. So I will be curating the type of books that we'll be reading, and they will be focused specifically on that.
I think that's something that is definitely needed right now, for us to not only stretch our imagination in terms of reading, but also find those solutions that we so desperately are seeking, and we are finding no way forward. So we appreciate you, VUVU, for bringing us Turning Pages and for bringing us your BookTube channel, because it is through this we are able to find a different voice.
Thank you so much, Balisa.
Cheers, Siswam. Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
If you're just like VUVU and you have a love for reading and literature, or you're much like myself and you think that reading is still right up there on your resolutions list, head over to our Afternoon Express Facebook, Instagram and Twitter pages. Use that hashtag Afternoon Express and let's share some inspiration in terms of reading.